the nature of certain disciplines like astrophysics, certainly planetary sciences, physics, so on and so forth. Radiation is simply a form of energy. Sciences, physics, so on and so forth. Radiation is simply a form of energy. Okay? Radiation is travels in a form of rays, what they call rays. Okay, electromagnetic waves. Right? Those waves are actually they're actually particles. Those waves are a bunch of particles in a very specific vibration, causing a. Well, I'm not going to go into depth on that. Anyway, they're electromagnetic waves or particles. Okay, radiation, these galactic cosmic rays, based upon their wavelength, can also be visualized. You can see them. The auroras, for example, right? They're caused by high-speed collisions. In many cases, the initiation point of these are galactic cosmic rays, right? So we always have galactic cosmic rays coming into our system. Now, on occasion, we have higher strength galactic cosmic ray sets coming into our system, like from pulsars and quasars and things like that. Those are high energy bands that smash into the heliosphere. If the heliosphere is strong, it will redirect most of that radiation and energy directly to the sun. The sun absorbs it, right? It utilizes it. If the sun is weak in its emission of radiation at that point, those bands will breach the heliosphere and they will come in and do damage to the solar system. Do you guys see that? So the point here is that we always have high energy particles trying to burst through the heliosphere to come inside our solar system on a continuous basis. So much so that suppose the sun stopped emitting for 1 second. Do you know what would happen? If it just stopped emitting all of its radiation for 1 second, you know what would happen? Theoretically, of course, because this never happened before. All the planets inside of the solar system would be destroyed. It would only take a failure of the sun, 1 second, and we're done for. See how that works? 1 second, and all that energy would not be stopped, and it would come straight into the center of our solar system, ripping through the nuclei of every particle out there. It would knock the nucleus out of our structure. Our structure would break down. That's our massive radiation doses. That's what would happen. 1 second would do that. When you hear that the sun is letting off CMEs and flares and things like that, I would suggest that you say thank God for that. Because every single time we have a flare, it strengthens portions of the heliosphere. It's somewhat like that. You guys remember I was on Patch Ball and I told you guys we're going to have solar flares, right? I told everybody kind of passively, we're going to have a solar flare, but it's not going to be pointed towards Earth. It's going to be a sizable one, right? Then when we had the solar flare, I don't know how many of you guys remember that. But it was like a few days later, we had the solar flares, right? I told you that because a small tiny pulse was coming through. That's why. Small, tiny pulse. And they've been coming through so much now that you can forecast, to a degree, what they're going to do based upon their size. So then I was expectant of a solar flare based upon that pulse that came through. Well, we have a bigger one coming through in August. What will it cause? I don't know. We only have historical data points. That's all we have. There's no real way to forecast what the absolute outcome will be. But there's a probability. It's going to be it's going to be intensified based upon what we have observed in the past. It's coming through next month. Just so you guys know. We have a pulse coming through. This pulse It's followed by something, by rocks. This actual pulse is followed by rocks. The rocks behind this pulse are not going to miss us either. I believe that's going to be the actual beginning of a long durational process that the Earth will undergo. I also believe that you'll be able to see the moon being smacked on occasion by these things, which means the moon is about to change. We see it. We don't see regolith all over the place, being shut out 50 miles away from the moon. That's not what we see. But I believe that we're about to witness that. A permanent halo around the moon where it's been hit by so many small objects. Now be wise, many of these objects will burn up in the atmosphere that are ice-based. But if anything is metal-based, chances are some of those particles are going to pass right through. And I suspect that we're about to be inundated with some very hard iron. Not iron ferrite, so to speak, but some very, not only iron, but some other meteoric elements. We're going to have them. And because they're metal, they're going to be attracted to certain spots on Earth, which means their trajectory is going to be highly affected by these strong magnetic areas in the Earth. And that's only the beginning. Those rocks, if they hit during a time that's hot in those places, fires are going to be a result of it. Fires. Well, now you know about August 17th, don't you? And I want you guys to do me a favor. Don't fear August. Let it be a day of observation. A month of observation, not a day. Don't fear it. Don't do that. Listen, nothing is going to happen in a large scope to humanity until the Lord decrees it. So no matter...
Not the L word, because that's pagan. So the Creator decrees it. Nobody knows the time or the hour, but we do know it's close.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to part 3 of this video series. And I apologize for the short time. I'm going to speak here in sections. Alright, now we have already successfully established this line as the elliptical orbit of the planet Nibiru that the Anunnaki claim to come from. First off, I'd like to tell you that even though that this note supports all of this, I'm telling you that this planet Nibiru, the dwarf star, is not there. They are using this as a way to explain the arrival of these ancient gods and the destruction that this elliptical orbit is going to cause. And they've also given us a little bonus symbolism here between the unicorn and the lion. Now, as I've stated before, this represents the 12 tribes of Israel, these two symbols. But what you have to understand is that the 12 tribes were divided in the reign of the king of Rehoboam. Okay, and I'm going to have to spell that because I probably mispronounced it. But there was a division of the 12 tribes that happened in the reign of this king, Rehoboam. And I'm going to spell that Rehoboam. So during his reign, there was a division. The symbolism for the two separate houses of Israel, which would be the house of Judah and now the house of Israel, is the lion, which we have here, and the unicorn. And that's what you're not seeing here. You can see the outline of a horse, but right here, what you can't see from my phone is that there is a horn. This is a unicorn. So incredibly, this has a religious significance, and even more importantly, it has a direct significance with that of the lineage of Christ and even the division into two houses of Israel.
Now, Mr. C, Mr. J, the vision when it was a guy that was kidnapped from our people. They kidnapped him from us. But listen, they turned him against us and made him believe he was the creator and gave him an army. He came against us, kidnapped our people and our kids and brought them back to the Portuguese Spaniards He was a traitor. He was a devil, a wolf in sheep's clothing. All skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Israel. Now, you're going to have to do a little homework on this and possibly Google for information, but Google something like this, lion and unicorn.
Just so you're wondering, there was a whole bunch of different Mr. J's. They got a whole bunch of different of them. They tried this over and over again.
Is it Israel? Question mark. And you should get options that come up which will give you further information of this understanding. Because the video is short, I'm going to stop there, but just assure you that this represents the division of the 12 tribes of Israel into two separate houses. The house of Judah, which contained Levi and Benjamin, and then also the house of Israel, which contains the rest of the tribes. So in understanding that, this elliptical orbit is showing the destruction, or the partial destruction, of the remaining house of Israel, and then the entire destruction, the decapitation of those of the lineage of Judah. But realistically, this is being used more as a symbol to show the total destruction of all the believers of Christ. I'm going to come with another video.
I'm going to be talking about the ancient secular mythology about what is known by the ancients as the winged disc, and how it relates to Leviathan, or Planet X, also known by some as Nibiru. First, however, I will start with the ancient Hebrew tradition. Moses was from the tribe of Levi, and in the desert God told him to go to Egypt to rescue his people, and gave him power to cast his rod into a serpent, which in Hebrew the word is Nakash in Exodus 4:3. When he threw it down in front of Pharaoh in Egypt, however, the word is not Nakash, but Tanin instead, which means dragon or sea monster. When you put Levi in front of Tanin, you get Levi Tanin. But when combined as one word, some letters get dropped to become Leviatine, which is Leviathan, the serpent of Moses. Moses kept his Egyptian name Moses rather than his Hebrew given name, which means to draw out of the water, which you can read about in the book of Jasher. Jones' Dictionary of Old Testament Proper Names derives it from the Egyptian word for water, mo, and the verb to save out of water, usus, hence Moses, Exodus 2:10. Just as God gave Moses the rod that would become a serpent as a sign of God, so too God gave Moses the ability to, as it were, cast a celestial sea monster, being Leviathan, that would in appearance seem to come out of the water onto Egypt, causing the Exodus plagues. Leviathan is a celestial Planet X body with a long tail. In Isaiah 27:1 mentions Leviathan and the dragon, or Tanayin, as related to the end times, and Job 26:13 uses the exact same Hebrew words as in Isaiah 27 for Leviathan as the fleeing serpent, where it says, "By his spirit he has garnished the heavens, his hand hath formed the fleeing serpent." This means Leviathan is a heavenly serpent and linked to the seas. In other words, it appears to come up from the seas as you look south from the northern hemisphere over the waters, but is actually coming in the sky. At the time of the Exodus, the Egyptians were killing every male child of the Hebrews. The Hebrews in Egypt were said to be as God's firstborn son, so he links up the idea of God's firstborn son being killed before a major rescue event happens from Pharaoh, who is represented as a serpent in Isaiah 51:9.
Okay, so, he tossed that pagan shit in there. They would kill any of us that would be the Creator's sons. Now, when he talking about Mr. G.O.D., who's a devil, because it's actually a backwards word, it stands for dog. The dog's sons. There's a whole other ball game. That's something that you will have to do more research in, so chew the meat, spit out the bones.
Just like as Christ was the firstborn son of God, also died on the cross. As the Israelites, the following I attempt to convey four things.
Of course, we don't believe in that.
One,
No
many
man can die
ancient
for your
civilizations
sins.
mentioned a story that matches the Hebrew dragon Leviathan. Number two, Leviathan is a Planet X type body with a long tail that separates from itself to look like a dragon or serpent, and hence is really a celestial serpent. Number three, Leviathan had 7 heads, which matches Revelations chapter 12 as the great red dragon in the heavens yet to return. And number 4, what they saw really tells the story of God's salvation that would later come through Jesus Christ.
Again, shooting me spit out the bones. This guy keeps throwing pagan shit in there. I don't know what the fuck. He loves paganness. We're trying to avoid the pagan stuff.
Cuneiform tablets excavated since the 1930s. Dr. Charles Pfeiffer in his book Lotan and Leviathan makes mention of some Old Testament verses that closely match some text actually found in the Rosh Hashanah, which links Lotan to Leviathan. A quote from the cuneiform text of Ugarit: "For you smote Lotan, the slippery serpent, and made an end of the twisting serpent, the tyrant with 7 heads. The heavens will grow hot and will droop." Compare that to a similar verse in the Bible, in Isaiah chapter 27:1, where it says, "In that day the Lord with his hard and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan the fleeing serpent, Leviathan the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea." Virtually all agree that the Canaanite Lotan is equivalent to the Hebrew Leviathan. Here in Ugarit, as well as in West Semitic mythology, Lotan ruled the rivers and the seas, while Baal was lord of the rains and thunder. In the Rosh Hashanah text, Lotan was challenged in battle by the sky god Baal, with Baal slaying Lotan after a furious battle, but not before being eaten by Mot, the god of the dead, to return from the dead and then to defeat Lotan. This is a very common element in mythology of the ancient Near East. Lotan or Leviathan is described in the ancient accounts as the tyrant
devil
with 7
versus
heads,
the devil,
the primeval serpent, or the chaos monster, the twisting serpent, and the ancient dragon, or Mot and Lotan, but using different names. Ra's enemies, which start in the southern sky, heading north, as I quote from Ancient Egyptian Legends by M.A. Murray. A disc that glowed like a ball of fire with great wings on either side, like the colours of the sky at sunset, when the blue shades from dark to light, and is shot with gold and flame. And also, upon his glorious wings he rose into the air. The Babylon description of the star Nibiru has many similarities to this also. In Egyptian writings it says that Horus made Ra's enemies to lose their sight and hearing so as to kill each other, and then I quote, "While over them flew the gleaming disc, watching for Set." Also,
so in other words, although these religions and beliefs have a lot of similarities, that should tell you something. There are some good history in here to let you see what's really going on. But how come all these religions got similarities, and why was they serving Nibiru? Who rides Nibiru? Who lives on Nibiru? What is Nibiru really?